Hi there guys, I'm here with my sweet baby Yof and just taking some time today to do a little bit of creative practice. So what we did, Miss Yof and I, we utilized some wet into wet watercolor technique to then make something kind of loose and simple like this from really ambiguous beginnings of just like putting a whole bunch of wet into wet on the paper and then letting it dry and then letting it turn into something instead of going to this with a plan. It's just like throw some paint on there, let it dry, and then let it become whatever it wants to instead of trying to make a specific image. So we'll go through that process here real quick, and Ophelia and I will continue to hang out and cuddle while we edit this video. So thanks for being here. Bye. Okay, so first things first. We're using Artist Loft watercolor paper. It's the 140 pound cold press 6 by 9 inches. And first thing that we'll do is go ahead and get the entire surface of the paper nice and wet so that we can have a nice juicy canvas to work with, since the whole point of this is to make it really loose and really flowy, so there's nothing but kind of like happy accidents that happen as we go in and actually start painting. So that way you're not really tied into any particular idea, and it's training your brain to see ways that stuff can be made from what's right in front of you. So I think it's a really fun exercise. I struggled with this quite a lot when I was first starting out, especially since when I was really young first doing this. There wasn't much in the way of practice and training that I'd already done. So as you go through and practice and continue to make pieces, this exercise gets easier and easier to come back to. So yeah, just having dropped in some Daniel Smith paints. Those are my go-to paints for pretty much every situation, although Winsor Newtons are pretty good too. This is a combination of a type of turquoise, and then I actually have some brown paint in with the turquoise somehow, and so it's mixing together to create some of like these little darker areas too. So you can see how it's flowing really nice and loose on there. Yeah, there you can see the brown coming through, making that nice kind of mucky green color. But you can see how as the pigment is moving on the water, we're moving through the water, how it pushes the other layers that were previously put down around. So that's kind of the fun part about this, is since nothing is dried, and every time you put your brush back on the page, it is going to have an effect that you can't predict, you can't control, since it's so loose right now. So anyways, we'll just kind of keep this going and see how it unfolds. We'll have to stop and let it dry so that way when you go back into it, you're not going to have a situation where you're accidentally lifting up paint that hasn't quite set just yet. And if you can hear it cat purring, it's because my little friend is on me, and she's having a great time. So anyways, back to the painting. So I don't tape down my paper, as you can see, obviously. I like how it will kind of warp and bend up a little bit or down depending on, the orientation, and how that can create some interesting effects, which does make it much more prone to watermarking. And in this particular situation, I didn't want this to be so sweet that we're going to have huge watermarks. I wanted some smaller ones, but I didn't want to keep all this extra water on there to create the really hard, well-defined ones that can be a bit tricky to then blend in with the rest of the painting. So I personally am going to go ahead and lift the extra water out of there when it starts to pool around the edges, but to each their own. I'm sure there are plenty of situations that I will decide to leave those in the future, and those will create really interesting and challenging things to work with. So it just depends on your personal preference. This is also a good exercise if you have paints that you haven't used yet, or paints that you want to see how they interact with different types of paints, the granulating versus the non-granulating, etc. So you can use this, slap a couple of different kinds of paints on there, and create an experiment just to see how vibrancy, granulation, all that good stuff is affected. All right, so it's dried. You can see there's this little white spot that somehow was missed when we were first putting water down. So we're going to take that and turn it into a little moon that's peeking out over the tops of either trees or shrubs or something like that. Again, it's a happy accent, so we got to use it. And then just seeing how different the dry paint is versus the wet paint and how it loses a lot of the vibrancy. And now we're going to go through and, since it is completely dry, do some wet onto dry and start to just play around with turning these shapes into whatever feels right. It doesn't have to be any particular thing. Again, for me, I felt like starting up here to see if I could try to turn these into some trees that the moon was then peeking out over the top of. But as you can see, it will change from this early idea to something a bit different, which is perfectly fine. That's the whole nature of this, is to just go with the flow of whatever you're feeling in the moment. I'm using a Princeton Neptune script brush size 4 for this because I think of this as like a sketch type of practice. So I like how it more or less mimics the type of feel of having a pencil or pen in your hand, as the early architecture of whatever this is going to be is starting to come into its own existence. Plus, I just think it's really fun to make nice thin little lines. There's just something very satisfying about that for me. So I know a lot of people would probably prefer to use a round brush, maybe something like a filbert, whatever their preference is. This just happens to be mine, even though you don't have a ton of ability to hold a lot of paint or water. I just love the way it feels when I'm actually using the brush. So that's my preference. Again, your mileage may vary. Do whatever feels right. This is what felt right for me, so I went with it. One of my favorite things about this particular way to make a painting is how, as you continue on with it, it really starts to take you on more of a journey as to what the ultimate look will be. And you don't really know it's happening until it's almost already been done. You'll see what I mean when I get to this middle area here that is still white. I didn't expect what ended up going in there to be what went in there, but I'm pretty happy with it because I don't usually make this a component of my paintings, and it just kind of showed up, and I'm really happy with how it ended up turning out. And I think it made the piece a lot more interesting to look at too. So again, it's all about the journey, not about the destination. So you may as well enjoy where the ride takes you. And here we are, so we're pretty much done. Just a little bit of a close-up look at it. And it ended up turning into kind of like this little stairs to a beach type of scene, which never would have expected, but very happy with the outcome. And then here's Miss Ophelia saying, thanks for watching, have a great day, and keep on painting. Bye-bye.